Weekly Download, a podcast about interesting games, industry news.
Brought to you by Big Games Machine.
Don't say the 3, 2, 1, James. Do you know nothing about podcasting?
We'll cut this bit.
It's fine. It's fine. Tom will fix it in. Tom will fix it in post.
Yes. Or Elodie will.
Oh, I've just realised as I say that I'm cooking myself slowly. I ended up buying the heater you recommended, James.
Did you?
I want to give it a shout out on the podcast. Yeah, because my old one blew up and literally took out half the wall of, well, not literally.
Yes, I know.
I'm
glad the new one's good though. It's working well.
Yeah.
In that
Although
small
it arrived definitely scuffed, like it wasn't as new as they claimed. But I'm in my shed. I need it here, so there's not a lot I can do about it.
Should we start?
Yes, we can start. Oh, God, I've forgotten what this thing is called. Tom always does that. I just know it's the podcast. So welcome back to the Big Games Machine Weekly Download. I've done that backwards. I'm going to do it again. Sorry, Tom. So welcome back to the Weekly Download by Big Games Machine, your essential weekly speed run through the biggest stories of the video games week. You might notice a bit of a change this week because I am not Tom. I am usually sitting in the co-host chair and I have been upgraded as Tom is out today. Do not worry. At times, I will be channeling him as a lot of the script is from him. But joining me this week is James.
Hello.
Here we go. I believe you were last on 2 weeks ago. Is that right?
2 weeks ago. It's
Like
lovely
2 weeks
to be
ago.
back.
So
It's lovely to be back.
returning co-host. We're just kind of cycling through now in a kind of list of hosts and co-hosts. It's good dynamism for the show. As always, we're going to be hitting on 3 of the biggest stories of the week and then moving into a couple of quick hits as we move towards the end. Things that either make us chuckle or we find interesting, but perhaps not the biggest news. If you prefer, as always, if you prefer to read your news, feel free to hop on the daily download or the weekly download on our LinkedIn or from the site. And be sure to follow us here. I'm going to put that up front because we always leave to the end. Be sure to follow us here for your news every week. So straight into the first story, and it's a common tale. I think we're hearing quite a lot of things around both redundancies, layoffs, and strike action at the moment, and union elements. And this is the big news from Ubisoft that 1,200 employees have gone on strike from the publisher over the last few days. And these are primarily involving staff from France and Italy who are responding to recent studio closures, game cancellations, and a mandatory 5-day return to the office policy. Union representatives state that after years of stagnant wages and minimal wage increases, employees were told that they would not receive a raise again this year, despite pressure and understaffing caused by the recent layoffs. A major sticking point is that the company insists on a 5-day return to on-site office requirements, which workers are arguing ignore the infrastructure laid down during the remote work over the past few years caused by the pandemic. And that's creating a large burden for those that relocated during that time. The other thing the unions are claiming as part of this is that the CEO, Yves Guillemot, they are claiming that he has no knowledge or understanding of the company or its employees, labeling the management's decisions recently as absurd. It also isn't the first time this has happened, with just 2 years ago, 700 employees also striking because of the return to work policy at the same company. That being Ubisoft, if you've lost track of that through that long monologue. James, what are your thoughts on this?
Yes. Yeah. Weirdly enough, I discussed this last time I was on. Yes, I'm slightly torn, I suppose, because I'm a business owner. So I see it from the perspective of Ubisoft. I can unfortunately understand why they wouldn't be putting up wages, particularly in the economic climate when, they are very sadly downsizing. They do not want to then be adding more to their overheads, even though inflationary pay rises are expected in most companies, but I understand that. Yeah, it's just it's a difficult situation. I think the other thing about the remote working, it's really hard for me to comment on remote working and if it is working or not for other companies, because, we are not a huge company, but we are remote and it works very well for us. And it has worked very well for us since we decided to do it after the pandemic. But when you've got huge studios and collaboration and they want everyone back in, it's not for me necessarily to say, oh, yeah, you should definitely go back to remote working, because I know there's plenty of companies that have mandated being in the workplace, because there are just a lot of things you get from being in proximity to other people. I'm not against that, but I think it's what you said, Alex. If people have relocated on the basis, or they've changed their lives, or childcare, or their life is based around the patterns of remote work, I understand why that can be galling.
Yeah, and I know I saw this on a few sites, and I think there have been claims of this being a kind of, I can't remember what it's called, like a way of pushing people towards stepping down. I know there's an actual term for that,
I
rather than
think it would
giving them
be
redundancy.
it would be called. I'm not insinuating this is what
No,
Ubisoft is doing, by the way,
no.
but it would be called constructive dismissal in my
There we go.
book.
Fair enough. No, and I think that's something that it's something that I was leveled at them in either one of the articles or a claim from the union. I can't remember where. We'll put it in the notes, but that I think that's certainly, be it intentional or not, I think when you're calling people back to the office when maybe they have kids settled in school or elements like that does become a factor. Intended or not, it might push people to make the change, which I think, were you to call me back into London, were you to reopen an office, I think I wouldn't be able to stay. It would be a change I would also have to make.
Yeah, I mean, but on a kind of serious note, I think that when you make everyone go back in the office, you're assuming you're getting the best people. You're not always going to get the best people, right? Because there's really good people that are just not going to up it and move to where you are as a company, but they could work very successfully remotely, and many people do. So I'm quite passionate I'm very pro hybrid, being in the office, seeing other people. Like, I'm very for it. But also at the same time, especially when I look at London, making everyone move to London from areas of the UK, whereas they could be very happy and afford to buy a house and just want to stay with their friends and family just to come and be in London. I get why you're not opening yourselves up to the best people. They're not all in London or are prepared to move to London. So you're missing out on a really good pool of talented people.
Absolutely. And I must admit, when I first read this, my brain went to them all being in Paris, when I'm like, that's a big ask, but it is studios located throughout France and Italy. So, they're not necessarily all in capital cities where the costs are through the roof. It is just, location. It may even just be the length of the commute that people are no longer keen on, because it is a big shift, especially if you've, again, childcare and things are all tied into that. But we're going into a whole line of cost of living element on there. I think the bottom line is that it's becoming an increasingly common refrain that there are layoffs, work goes up, and then changes happen at companies. And that will likely be something we continue to see, this kind of strike action around those decisions for at least a little while to come.
I think the underlying thing here as well is Ubisoft just can't catch a break at the moment. It's constantly under the cosh, week in, week out, negative PR. And we discussed this last time. Like, I just think Ubisoft is just finding it tough generally to catch a break when it comes to having positive or good news.
So on to our second story, and this is something we touched on last week again, actually, and this is news from Highuard and its developer, Wildlight Entertainment, and it's more layoffs. I feel like when you look at stories that seem to have been consistently in the news around gaming for the past 2 years, this is certainly one of the greater themes. And the story specifically is Wildlight Entertainment has laid off most of its development team just 2 weeks after the launch of their hero shooter Highuard. Wildlight claims that it's keeping its core group to support the game, but does scale But does the scale of the layoff suggest that the future content development is effectively on hold? Critical reception was lukewarm to Highuard when it launched, describing it as a jack of all trades, master of none that didn't do enough to differentiate itself from the likes of Apex Legends and Overwatch. In the current market, games no longer have the time to find their footing over months. It's looking increasingly like that's going to be the case moving forward. But is this leading to a hit or die culture that is discouraging innovation and risk from companies? Was composed of Apex and Titanfall devs, for those of you that don't remember from the last time we spoke about this. And seeing this so-called group of super devs fail so quickly suggests that even pedigree and isn't enough to help games make it in the market, especially in the live service space. So yeah, I mean, this is something that we're seeing increasingly, and I'm sure we're going to touch on another few stories around this. But do you feel this kind of hit or die quick move to seeing success with no kind of long-term plan to mitigate a rocky launch is becoming increasingly problematic for studios?
I think there's different issues here. You're asking me about, is it knee-jerk to just basically cut your losses and cut the team and get rid of half the people? But they're in a kind of a weird no man's land, aren't they? Because if they want to iterate and improve, and we were talking about Cyberpunk last time, and I know it's not a live service game, it like Highuard is. But obviously that's the poster child of terrible reception and then becomes beloved after a lot of iteration and a lot of work. Once again, it's really hard because if the there's financial reasons, right? If you get rid of half the team, they're not making the money. They can't sustain a team that size, but it's kind of weird catch-22 because then you don't have the team that's large enough to then make the improvements. And even if you do make the improvements, there's no guarantee the game is going to triumph, right? There was a good article from Chris Dring today on the Business of Games about why Highuard failed, and we basically discussed it when I was on 2 weeks ago. Of all the many things, it's that it came out of nowhere and didn't engage a community in rigorous playtesting feedback. And so that's just such for a live service game to kind of stick it out there and almost use it as your alpha live playtest and that's from Apex, because once again we discussed that Apex, of which over half the team were Apex people, that did that, didn't it? It did the kind of announce and drop maneuver.
Yeah, it all happened in one go. But I mean, I think that speaks to how the space. I mean, it hit then, but I do wonder if just like the entire game marketplace has changed since then. There's more things crowding it out. People are a bit more locked in place for some things and a bit more open to indies for the rest. So it's sitting in this weird ground of not one of the established, but also perhaps not as wildly creative as some of the things that it's coming up and competing against. That's without touching on all the weird backlash that there seemed to be at launch.
I mean, so many games are live service now, and it's always a risk, but definitely in recent times, we've seen Arc Raiders, Battlefield 6, they've all had like strong playtesting, feedback, beta, public beta, like big events, that are getting everyone in for a focused period of time to test a game, to try it and everything. So that's kind of expected from the user base. So if you hand people something that is a fait accompli, like, here you go, here's the thing that we've made, and this is the first you're going to play it. And once again, I said it last time and I will say it again, there's a key difference between Battlefield 6 and Apex Legends and this. This is a free-to-play game. So free-to-play games, people have little or no value perception. They're not invested in the success of the title because they haven't parted with £50, £60, whatever it is. So in principle, putting a live service game out there with no playtesting, user feedback, or community is just risky no matter what the business model. But it's not like for like in my eyes when people pay money for Helldivers 2, and that was a really good entry point of like £25, something very low.
Yeah, 25, 30.
Battlefield 6, yeah. All these live service games are a premium or affordable titles, some of them. Arc Raiders as well was like 30 quid. It was affordable as well. Like, so you didn't really have to think about it too much.
Mm.
But this is a free to play game. And so people are quicker to criticize it. They're less forgiving and they're much less loyal. They'll hop in and they'll just leave if they don't like it. There's no sense of value or investment. So I just think it's really important that when you're assessing Highuard, there is a kind of understanding as well that people have a different mentality for free to play games.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that perhaps hasn't been said, and maybe they would look even worse, and obviously this is speculation, but would be if this was always part of the plan. We saw it with Nexon and Marvel Rivals, downsizing and moving, like letting go of the American team and focusing all of it, I think, back in Korea with cheaper studios. Once the game was up and running, once the tools were built, once the kind of content pipeline was set. And if Highguard's in a similar situation, keeping on a whole team of what other elements they might want if they don't have another game plan and they're just planning on kind of live service maintenance. Maybe they didn't need as many and this was always going to be on the roadmap for them. It's obviously speculative, hard to know. But yeah, once the game's out, do you need as many people to be keeping it going? As long as they were well remunerated while they were in the employment. Who knows what the kind of plan was there? Because we're once the game's out, a lot of contractors and a lot of other staff you do see a drop off at a lot of studios. Yeah, so wrapping up this week's bigger topics, we're going to look at Discord and its upcoming age verification gateway. So starting in March 20, Discord is going to require age verification for all of its users. After initial backlash, Discord did clarify that most adults won't need to upload IDs and instead can analyze account tenure, device data, community patterns, and to help guess if you're an adult. If the AI can't verify you, or if you want to access, and if you then still want to access adult features, you'll have to use face age estimation or upload a government ID through third-party partners. This follows a similar move by Roblox, which aims to prevent underage access to mature content and other controversies that Roblox has had to deal with in recent years, obviously making it something else that's kind of driving that decision from them. Discord is the most modern kind of portal for people to be getting support or things directly from companies or to its community. So how do you think this is likely to impact that community space for developers, James?
I think the reasonings behind it are fair, right? In the sense that you've got young kids going on and being exposed to 18 plus levels of discussion, conversation, content in Discord. And it's interesting that it's followed on from Roblox, because we obviously know that Roblox had its own massive challenges with age verification. Unless I'm wrong, the CEO car crash interview that was a few months ago.
Yeah.
No one's seen it. You should go and see it. And that was all around age verification and protecting children. You know, there are strict laws out there, you know, and some of them are specific to certain states in the US and certain countries. And obviously with adult
the UK
sites,
especially at the moment.
Yeah, the UK, you know, adult websites especially have had, you know, they're very different to Discord, but they've now got age verification in some places, the UK, and some places in the US. But, you know, look, if someone wants to unfortunately get around it, they will do. I think I read the article before, people were using Death Stranding pictures
For specifically Discord, actually. Yeah, I was going to bring that up. When I lived in Japan, they introduced this on cigarette and alcohol vending machines, and you could hold up a 1,000 yen note, and the politician who was on the back would fool it into like allowing you to buy whatever you wanted. And this is like Death Stranding is very much just the modern equivalent of that for me. I thought it was amazing that I guess amazing that the visuals were good enough to trick the AI, but at the same time, if that's all it takes, it's not a massive gateway for people.
Yeah, I mean, look, once again, I come at this from the angle of a parent, right? Like, I've been in the games industry for 30 years. I've been looking at consistently get angry when people buy GTA for their 11-year-olds and people ignore age ratings, like they're somehow not the same as movie film ratings. My one of my daughters, she plays a lot of games, but she doesn't really go into voice chat, but she's 19, and so I don't need to really shield her anymore, to hopefully not. That's becomes a moderation issue in once people are inside voice chat, which is a completely separate topic. But yeah, I think I do understand the sentiment of wanting to protect minors and underage kids from and there's the darker side of Discord. Like, I know there's grooming and there's all the things that go on in Roblox. I don't know if that's a concern or whether it's just the type of content that gets discussed on Discord. I don't know, or all of the above. I don't really know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole separate thing there about just anonymity in general. Like, should almost, I realize this as I say it out loud, almost if some people are forced to give up all their kind of proof of who they are and be held to essentially be trackable and held to account, should everybody have some element of that on there? Obviously, a lot of not the word, a lot of things that happen that are unpleasant are done under the veil of anonymity. And would shedding that be a net positive or not, or are there benefits to having that? But I think the big thing is in this third party government ID age verification thing. Obviously that has been a thing in the UK recently, as you stated, with adult content. That obviously then leaves very personal data and very revealing data in the hands of a third party.
Yeah.
And that is perhaps also something we don't want. I guess keeping people safe is difficult, is the bottom line of where we go.
Yeah,
I don't have an answer.
On a final note, that's a very good point you've raised. Is there just privacy concerns? Once again, I read about it before, that they're like, okay, well, if I upload my driving license or my passport, where is that sitting on the server? Where's the server? So that then goes into that goes into privacy concerns and all kinds of things. So yeah, it's a bit of a quagmire when you get into it from a practicality perspective from a lot of angles. But in principle, age verifying to protect children should not be in of itself. It's an admirable virtue. It's when you get down to the practicalities of it, it becomes
Yeah, it shouldn't be controversial. No. I remember when I worked in game stores, the shouting matches I had about not selling an 18 to an under 18 person.
Precisely.
There's a reason, but yes, it's coming. Hopefully it won't be a massive issue for a lot of companies that, obviously have their community on there, for companies that use it as their kind of chat and co-working platform. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes up when it does get applied next month. It is time for the rapid rundown, some of the funner stories from the week. And we're going to start with my specialist subject, which is video game movies. And it makes me very happy. Uwe Boll is wanting to make another House of the Dead movie, but he wants you to pay for it. So yes, Uwe Boll, kind of famous for utilizing tax breaks to put out movies that make a profit no matter what, and utilizing game IPs to help achieve that and get some people interested. Made a House of the Dead movie, and I think in about 2003. It was awful. It includes at the end of the movie an entire flashback that wraps up the whole movie in reverse in about 30 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. And I suspect it's just in there to get them over the running length time to be a feature movie. Anyway, he wants to make another one of these, and he's put it on Indiegogo to be crowdfunded. Have you seen any Uwe Boll movies, James?
I have not. The most I've seen of Uwe Boll is watching him beating the living crap out of two journalists in a boxing ring. If no one is familiar with that, they should definitely go and look it up on YouTube. But as a side thing, just because it's, whatever.
Well,
Uwe Boll had his detractors. Were they video games journalists or film journalists? I can't remember.
No, they were video game journalists.
Right, and
what he kept quiet was that he was a university boxing champion.
Yeah,
when he issued the challenge to them.
And to be hats off to them, or props as our US listeners would say, they turned up and they thought they were going to get an easy ride, and he actually put them through quite a lot of pain.
Yeah, I mean, he was the first kind of influencer boxing match, you could argue, like predating everything going on now.
Yeah, I can't say I've seen an Uwe Boll film. I mean, we discussed this in the office. as a bigger movie fan as I am, and it's not snobbishness, anything with Mila Jovovich in it or any Uwe Boll film, I just generally bristle and can't go anywhere near it. So, I mean, and this is the man who made Auschwitz the movie, lest we forget, for his quality output.
I will say things that are of note. I think I might be wrong about this being his last movie, but I think one of them might have been Meatloaf's last movie.
Right.
I think. And also Jason Statham was in one of them. So just fun facts about Uwe Boll movies. Yeah. So there you go. Maybe that's the one you want to go in with. He was in it with Ron Perlman. What a ride.
I wish him luck. I'd be interested to know how he does. It might be one of those really kitsch things that people put money in because just they want it to happen.
I take great pleasure in Uwe Boll movies. Not that they're good, but I do take great pleasure in watching them. Next story that we have here in the quick hits is that the claim or the observation from what was reported is probably a fairer statement that millions more people watched the Game Awards 2025 than Super Bowl 60. Now, this is coming from reporting from the Game Awards and Jeff Keighley of how many people supposedly watched the awards set against the reported numbers from NBC. The thing worth noting in this is that obviously the Game Awards were streamed over Weibo and every other kind of live service platform and co-partners and everybody else there, and each and every one of those was counted, whereas the reported ones from NBC were US viewings. And even then, it's not taking into account the number of people that might be at a watch party or some kind of celebration, which doesn't happen with the Game Awards. But still, you can go either way on this. Is it ridiculous that reporting and numbers can be this wildly altered? Or is it fantastic that the Game Awards are doing this well, James? Which question would you like to answer, James?
I'd like to be glass half full on this one. I think it's fantastic. Okay. I mean, you made a really good point. You made an excellent point, which I hadn't really thought of, is it's like the ABC for a magazine is you used to assume several people would read a magazine, right? Once they had it. And similarly, my daughter's boyfriend went to a bar in central London on Sunday night and would have watched that in a overnight with, a lot of people, but that would have just been counted as one viewing in a bar.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I agree with you. I understand it's storm in a teacup in terms of it may well be that the numbers are correct and it's not audited or verifiable with ABC's magazines and stuff. I mean, I think what's interesting in parallel to this, which our listeners may or may not be aware of that appeared in the news this week, that is kind of adjacent, is that the Oscars will not be broadcast on television anymore, I think, after next year. And they have done a multi-year deal. Yeah. So the Oscars have done a multi-year deal with YouTube. So as much as people may want to bitch and whine about numbers around, the Game Awards being watched online versus the Super Bowl, which will be on traditional sort of cable TV equivalents or whatever you want to call it, the Oscars is moving itself onto YouTube, and they've done this deals. That consider the future.
I was actually going to say for a moment there, I'm surprised it's not Netflix or somewhere that hosts or creates movies. But I guess one, that would be stacking things in your favor, arguably, and two, the Oscars probably don't want to be behind a paywall ultimately. So yeah, okay, I had missed that. But yes, I guess that the thing that is worth yelling about. I hope I'm right,
Alex. I mean, I'm going to have to go and fact check myself.
Not sure I said if you were right. That's not wasn't what I was implying.
No, but I'm worried about myself.
I will say the interesting thing for the
Oscars are moving to YouTube in 2029, so it's got a couple of few years left.
Okay. I will say that the Game Awards have gone up 11% year on year, which is something to yell about either way. And to give the numbers off the back of it, the reported numbers for the Super Bowl were 137 million, and that's set against 171 million.
Let's not knock Jeff.
Jeff's
done a great job of creating a global event for the games industry. Hats off to him. Good on him.
Absolutely. And the last one, a little bit of indie game news. Ed McMillan and Tyler, and I have never known how to say his name, so I'm just going to take a run at it. Tyler Glalie You know what I'm like with pronunciations. Glalie, I think. Mugenics managed to make back its entire development budget within 3 hours after its launch on Steam. These are the developers of Super Meat Boy and Binding of Isaac's, storied indie devs, but proving that they can continue to make things stick. Have you? I'll be honest. I hadn't paid much attention. I was never a big fan of the Binding of Isaac, so I didn't even know Mugenics was coming. Had you been following it at all, James?
No, I think it's just so it feels weirdly contradictory, doesn't it? Like we're kind of analyzing Highuard, saying, "I didn't tell anyone about it," and then like, no, Mugenics is, I just think, one of those lovely, unexpected successes that people kind of really enjoy in the games industry. One of those, where did that come from, or how did that happen moments. But like you said, it's got incredible, pardon the pun, incredible pedigree behind it in terms of the developers.
No, absolutely. Fantastic pedigree. And, obviously the Binding of Isaac has been kind of repackaged and reiterated a number of times and only gone from strength to strength for years. But it does kind of speak to, we see it sometimes where games kind of drop off the boil and we wonder where it's going to come to. I think about a month ago, we were talking about Yacht Club Games. And if their next game isn't a hit, they're going to have to close the studio, all those years after the indie darling that was Shovel Knight. And now here we are with another game that cries back to that kind of era, or even before that with Super Meat Boy being the beginning of their pedigree, and they've managed to keep that buzz going. So, two consecutive kind of paths and how they've worked out differently for each of them might be worth going back and having a look when we get a chance.
Lots of people love cats. Loads of people love cats. Like we did the game Crystala, which is about cats fighting, and it's the only game
Dark Souls
we've worked. Yeah, it's the only game we've worked on where months and months and months after we stopped working on it, we're still getting influencers asking for review. Like all the time, we're getting asked for review copies for Crystala. So there's clearly something feline centric in the world that people are warming to.
Yeah. And sadly, Tom's not here to have Ponyo kind of walk across the screen at that point. But, there we are.
Ponyo being Tom's cat, for anyone that doesn't know.
I'm sure has Ponyo never been on the podcast? I daren't believe it.
Don't know.
Surely.
Don't know.
Anyway, that's it for this week. Next week, I'm sure Tom will be back, so I won't have to channel his words quite as efficiently. But in the meantime, do like and subscribe to wherever you're listening to this. Feel free to leave us a review. If you've got any questions that you'd like us to address, feel free to drop them in there too, or hit us up on any of our socials. LinkedIn's probably a good one. And if you'd rather read your news throughout the week or have that summed up in a digest, we have both the daily download and the weekly download on LinkedIn, or you can sign up for the newsletters at biggamesmachine.com. Until then, I will see you probably in a week, and James will be back soon, I'm sure.